Hi, this is a how-to on MHFE screencast, and this one is about how to add alt text to images and objects on MHFE in order to make sure that it's accessible to people who use screen readers. This is a required standard for our website. It's a required standard from my point of view for the Equality Act, and it's a required standard increasingly for health and social care, where there is a new information accessibility standard that came into force in June 2016 and was part of the 2012 Health and Social Care Act, and requires people working in health, and for me that includes those of us working in higher and further education, to make sure that our communications are accessible, in particular to disabled groups who require us to change our practice really, and improve our practice. So first of all, what I'm going to do is show you how this works in Word, because I think everybody probably uses a word processor, and then to show you that really it's no different at all when it comes to the MHFE website. So first of all, if we look at Word, then what I've done here is I've prepared a document with a couple of images and a table. And first of all, just an extra tip, which is to say that it's really helpful if you've got, to begin with, an accessible template. So I have one set up for me when I use Word, and I make sure that I use Century Gothic because it's got a proper A, so it improves readability. Okay, I know it's not everybody's first choice, and it's quite hard to find a proper A font that you can use on a website, but for all of my documents I try to use Century Gothic. I also try to make sure that the bare minimum size that I would use for text and emails is a 12, and many of you will have seen statements about accessibility in my email signatures. The other thing to say, though, is that using the preset headings and styles makes a huge difference to accessibility. So as this is the title of my document, then I would use the style here and turn it into a proper heading. The bit to say is that on the whole, document headings are best if they can stick to one line, and that tends to mean keeping them to somewhere between 3 and 5 words. So I've just tweaked that one slightly, because obviously we know that we're talking about MHFE, or I could say that on the next line. What I've done here is I've added in 2 pictures, some text, and a table. And then what I'm going to do is, obviously the first thing I would do if I was ready to publish this is I would look at doing the spell and grammar check, and that seems to be okay. And then the next thing that I would do before I publish is I would do the accessibility check, which is right here on the ribbon in the review bar. And you can see that the accessibility checker has highlighted some errors. And if I move on and don't put those into practice, then 1, I'm breaking the standard for MHFE. 2, my personal opinion is I think that you're failing to follow the Equality Act, and if you work in health, you're failing to follow the Health and Social Care Act. And as many of us in FE and HE are preparing health workers of the future, or current, in education, then I think we have a duty to make sure that everything we produce meets the standard. So if I look at this, what's the matter with these images that I've got here? Well, the accessibility checker over here tells me, and it also tells me why to fix it and how to fix it. Okay, so the first error it tells me is that there's no alt text for picture 1. Now, alternate text is what the screen reader reads out, because somebody who's blind or partially sighted can't see the image. So screen reader reads out some words that help the person to understand what the image or object is, what it's doing there, what its relevance is, and means that they don't miss out on important meaning in the content. And we should think long and hard about whether we're using images because they add to the meaning of our content and the understanding of our content. Images for fluff, decoration, don't really have a place in the professional education that we're engaged in MHFE. So the first one is that this one hasn't got any alt text, and it says why fix it, and it says that alternative text for images and other objects is very important for people who can't see the screen. Screen readers read the alt text aloud, so it's the only information many people may have about the image good alt text helps people to understand it. And the steps to fix it are to right click it and add it. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to add the alt text to this image. Okay. So I'm just going to right click and do format picture. And then there are a number of options across here. And if you go to this one, it offers you the possibility for a text box to go in, and it offers you the option for the alt text. So we're going to take the option for the alt text. And many people who've been involved in the Community Learning Mental Health Project will recognise this particular image. It's an image showing the facing side of the Discovering Potential guidance wheel. So okay, so that's the title for it. And then what we're going to do is the alt text is the explanation that helps the person to know what this is about and how it relates to the text that you've got. So this is an image. So now I've got alt text for this particular image. If I rerun the accessibility checker, hopefully it won't tell me I've got missing alt text for that picture, and it doesn't. But it does tell me that I've got missing alt text for a table down here, and it says, why fix this? And it's exactly the same rationale and tells you exactly how to fix it. So again, you would highlight the table, the whole table, and then right click it. And then we would look at the table properties. And in the options that are available for the table, you can see that one of them is alt text. And again, it needs title. So and then we can say here that this is a 2-row and 2-column table with words in each cell that say, and then we would say what they do. And if it was a table of results, you would say what was in each column or whatever. So for us, it's the text that's actually here, which is making sure and that's it. Okay. So now when we rerun the accessibility checker, we should find that we have got rid of the warnings about the alt text, but we've still got another warning, and it says to us that we have got repeated blank characters, and it says that we've got those for 4. And what you do is if you click on it, it will highlight where the problem is, and you can see that I've got a space at the end of that line that's superfluous, and I've got spaces there. And lots of you might think it's really important to space out things to make it look nice, but actually you can make things inaccessible that way. And what you'll see here is when you say, why does it want to fix the blank characters? It says that some screen readers can read blank characters as blank, and this can be very irritating, especially if there are multiple blank characters. So what would then have happened for somebody is that their screen reader would have said, when I add text, I do so to the left of the image so that the person reading the content has some warning or clue as to what's coming next. Blank, 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 blank. And then it would read out the alt text that we've got for the table, which would say table with 2 columns and 2 rows containing words that say. So it's really important to think about getting rid of these characters, and the steps to fix it are just simply to use your formatting, and then you can choose what you're going to do about white space and things. This particular instance, all I need to do is to press the delete button in order to get rid of them. And then on my accessibility checker, I can see it now tells me that I've got no accessibility issues that have found, and that people with disabilities should have no difficulty reading this document. And you might not think this is enough of a space, but actually if it's made your document accessible, it's really important. And when we come to the website in a moment, this is particularly important because we have preset lots of the formatting and the spaces. And then what we find is that people put hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of extra spaces in, and they turn your content into something that's completely inaccessible for people. So that's kind of how it goes. One of the things to say to you is that the alt text must be meaningful. And I think you saw that sometimes that can be quite lengthy. Unless you've explained it in the text alongside, then you can be spending quite a lot of time explaining in your document what the alt text is. And this one that we had here was, quite a good example of that. The other one that I've got here was a little bit easier and shorter. So the alt text for this one, which I'd put in already, which is why it didn't show up, was to say that this was the front cover of a resource that had been produced. by NIAS. It was a 1 in 4 publication. It contained a collection of works and images produced by further education learners who have lived experience of mental health difficulties. And you may well be familiar with that one. Okay, so that's how it works on Word, and I think everybody's already used to doing that. So our position when it comes to the MHFE website is that the practice needs to be to the same standards and exactly the same. So here we go. I've started a blank page on the MHFE website. Obviously, you'll only be able to edit images and objects if you've got the necessary permissions and if you've logged in. So you can see that I'm logged in and I have the permissions. So little tip as usual, the title needs to be between 3 and 6 words really, and it needs to be meaningful, and it will help to form part of the URL link for it. It's very rare that something needs to be have limited access, so I would have told you if you need limited access. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add those same images, or one of those images here, to show you how it works. But we're also going to do something else, which is to resize an image, because on the website we have made it responsive, and that means when you look at it on a tablet or a smartphone, which is increasingly becoming the most common way for people to view web content, then you need everything to slide under each other. And what we keep finding is that people are adding images that are too big to start with, and then that stops the responsiveness of the website from working, and it makes it inaccessible again, not only to people who use screen readers, but to everybody, because it makes it huge, it makes it take forever to download, but it also makes it completely incomprehensible because often you can't get past the picture. So we're going to upload those same 2 pictures here, and I'm going to do that. But first of all, we've got to resize the pictures, and this is how I know if I need to resize the pictures. So first of all, to say that for a picture to work on the responsive system of the website, it must be no more than 400 pixels wide when we start. So what I do is I open the picture before I even contemplate using it, and I go into Tools, and I see what size it is. So I look at Adjust Size, and on this particular one I can see that the width is 231 pixels. The height doesn't matter, but the width does. So this one's fine. I can upload this one with no problem at all. So that's going to be fine. The next picture though was the picture of the wheel, and I don't know what size that is, so I'm just going to have a look at that. And when I go to Tools and look at the Adjust Size for this one, I see that it's 3024 pixels wide. So it's never going to work on the website. So I need to make sure that this is locked, and so that when I change one, the other will change and the proportions will change accordingly. And I must bring it down to 400 pixels or less, okay? Otherwise it's not going to work. And you need to make sure that we're going to see a sample of it to make sure it's not become completely illegible, and we need to make sure that the scale is maintained, okay? So if I look at that now, I've got a much smaller image. I need to save those changes, okay? I need to make it this size that I want. So I now know that's going to work on the website, okay? So I can pop those down and I can get on with my content. Now, obviously, normally I would have some text, and I might have a heading. But remember on a page that your title will appear when somebody reads it. And so that's your main heading. So it's very unusual that you need to actually start immediately with another heading, but you might do. And if you've got a heading, then you don't create the heading yourself. As I've said before, use the pre-formatted ones. So you highlight your text, you go over here to this drop-down box and you pick the heading, and that's a preset heading. And the spacing around it, which is so important for working with screen readers, is already set. Similarly, the text here is already set. Now, if you had imported the text from a Word document, and so you'd pasted it into here, then it will often come with code with it, and that can be problematic both for how it looks here on the page, but also problematic for screen readers again. So what you need to do is, if you are going to paste text, is that you highlight the text once you've pasted it, and you use this little eraser which removes the formatting. And then you would normally go to here and you would select paragraph, because this is text that's going to be in a paragraph, okay? And then I would maybe think, oh, now this is the point at which I'm going to insert that image. So on the toolbar, I pick the little tree icon which says Insert, Edit an Image. and a little dialog box comes up here. And the image I want isn't on here already, so I'm going to have to pick this, and that's going to let me upload the image. It'll take a moment or two to do that. So I use this left-hand upload instruction, and I need to go to my desktop and find the image that I want, which is here in Pictures. And the first one I'm going to take is this 1:4 cover, and I upload that. And it will appear here. Now, if you lose it and want to find it later, you can sort by date, and that's fine. But yes, this is the image that I want. Okay, so I double click that line and it appears here. And unfortunately, what we find is loads and loads of people think that's enough, and it is absolutely not enough for us. Okay, the image description is where you need to enter meaningful alt text. So it's that same text that we put into the Word document needs to go in here. So if you have done it somewhere else, then actually you can sometimes just go there and copy that across. So here, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm just going to copy that, and then I'm going to go across here, and I'm going to add it in here. And the bit that's important is that you start the alt text with the words image of, or table showing, or recording of, so that the person using the screen reader knows what's coming, because the screen reader will often just say object, okay? And then the title is something else. The title is something everybody sees when they're on the page, and that helps them to know what it is they're looking at, because sometimes images can be a bit abstract and, you know, what earth's that doing there? What's that to do with this particular article? So the title for this is something like the 1:4. So, and again, it is not acceptable to just do one and to leave the other. That's the bit that's important. Now, in terms of accessibility, that's almost it. But the other thing that we tend to do here on the website is we tend to make sure there's some white space between the picture and any text that we've got. And we tend to make that somewhere between 10 and 15, okay? And depending on where you've put your picture, we will also do the same around the horizontal space, and you can see the text and the picture moving there. Sometimes you don't need all of it, you know, you only need the horizontal space because of the position. Now, the other thing that we do is we tend to put a border around things, because if you're partially sighted and you're using a magnifier or magnification on your machine, then actually having a border makes it much clearer, as does the white space. So if we do, we just put a border of 1. We tend not to put something really heavy. And then the last thing that we tend to do, if there is text, is that we right align the picture, because what that means is that somebody's screen reader will read out that text which relates to the picture, because that's about the placement of your pictures, is that your text and images need to relate to each other for this to make sense to people. So your text will usually give people warning that might say, so we developed a publication that brought together a collection of people's ideas and thinking and experiences as images, poems, and prose, and then you've got the image, and then it makes perfect sense to somebody who's using a screen reader. So that's what I've done there. And we now have that right aligned with the text that's there. I might be slightly tempted to kind of move it a little bit, and I could do that later. So that's that. Now, the next bit is in terms of the other image that we've got, which, if you remember, we resized. So just going to pull that down so we're here, so we can enter this new image into the document. Okay. So it's exactly the same process. I'm going to go here. We know that the image is not on here, so I'm going to select this. It may take a moment for that to come up. I'm going to select upload, then choose a file, and it's choosing a file from my machine. We know this is the one that I resized. I might want to check it and take a quick look, but I'm pretty certain I know that that's the right one. I'm going to get a chance to check it anyway, because I'm then going to choose upload, and it will tell me here, and look, it's 400 by 400, so it's fine to use. Okay, so just pause for a minute and think about what would you put here in the image and the description while I put the title in. Okay, so again, we can go and take the description from the Word document that we used, and so that's what I'm going to do. And I'm just going to right click that, format it, go to find the alt text, and then I'm just going to copy that, go back to the website. But if not, I'm going to type it in freehand if I hadn't already got it somewhere else. Okay. And now on the website, it might be my context is slightly different. So we might know that we're talking about that it's always with learners. So it might change slightly. And that's it. Okay. And then the same as we had before, think about whether we need any vertical or any horizontal space. Think about whether it needs a border. And then we would normally have text and we would normally right align it. Now, the other thing that's really important and that you've noticed that I haven't done is I then click insert. And the other thing to notice is I've not then resized it on here. And that's really important. If you start then playing about with it and making it bigger by using the grab handles, you will defeat the whole object of trying to make this responsive. Plus, you will obviously potentially distort the kind of image. You won't, though, change the alt text. And what you can see on our website is the title of what this is appears. So that's there to kind of help everybody. But again, people who are partially sighted and who may be using magnification. It's also sometimes really quite helpful for people whose literacy levels might be a little bit lower, and it can help them to just kind of summarize in one line in a title what an image is meant to be telling them, and save them worrying that they can't, for example, in this one, that they can't read every word that's on the cover. So that's how you make things accessible. I'm then just going to click save. And that's it done. And because we set it up at the beginning, I'm just going to show you how that title has created the URL and why it matters that it's sensible. So the URL for this now is make images and objects accessible. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. And that's the end of this particular screencast.